from Northampton, are you?
I was born in Huntingdon.
Yeah.
My family's I started living in Hinckley, Leicestershire when I was from about the age of 6. But my grandfather was from Rushden.
Oh, right.
He was a Northampton Town fan. His dad was a Northampton Town fan, so he used to take me from around the age of 6. I used to go and see him in Rushden, and he used to take me to the Cobblers. So I started. It was a bit cruel, but he took. I could have been supporting Leicester or Forest or something, but he started taking me to Northampton from about the age of 6 or 7. So that's the connection.
Yeah, nice. So I'm actually right next to the King Power at the minute where I'm working.
Yeah.
So any traffic on the match days, that's down to me doing all the roadworks there.
Yeah.
I most love Man in Leicester at the minute, mate, isn't you?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. So obviously we're talking a bit about the Cobblers there. You were at the final game last season, weren't you? 1-0 at Tranmere.
Yeah.
What was the nerves like? You know, when obviously 1-0 coming up to that. You know, thinking with what it was like on the final day last season, or the season before, should I say?
Honestly, it was dreadful. I come back. I was abroad, and I come back a bit earlier for it. But the nerves on the day were absolutely horrible. And you know, I've coached a bit, and there are times when you kind of put too much. Some coaches put too much of themselves into it, perhaps. And I had a few times I was coaching, and it was just affecting my health. Or, you know, and that game with Tranmere, I was with my girlfriend, and it got to about 35 minutes, and I sat down, and I said to her, I remember this with my coaching, and it's killing me. It's horrible. Because, you know, you're supposed to enjoy this, but when it's really big, it
just
makes
there's so much
sick.
on the line, isn't it?
Yeah, it shouldn't matter that much, but it does somehow, you know. And I think with Tranmere, because it was the culmination of 2 years of it, and it never felt in the bag. You know, it was a fantastic goal from Sam, and but it never. I think even when we knew what happened in the other game, we still waited for the final whistle to go, because we didn't quite believe it. So
that's the Cobblers all over, though, isn't it? Make everything hard every single time.
Yeah. So I don't know. I was, you know, I was looking at people around me, and there were some people were, you know, enjoying it. I wasn't enjoying it. It was horrible. I just couldn't wait for the game to. Well, it's one of those, isn't it? You start like finish the game now. So yeah.
What was that? What was that feeling like when that whistle went?
It's funny, isn't it? How your emotions are different. It was big. I went a bit more mad the other night when Sam scored the 98th minute goal against Lincoln.
Oh, right, yeah.
Because you have different emotions at different times. It's 1,000 times bigger knowing you've been promoted, but it was just the relief. And it was obviously big, but I weren't like going mental. It was just, oh my God, like, thank you. You know, you're almost crossing yourself and saying thank you, sort of thing, as opposed to just going mad on the moment, I think.
Oh. So did you watch the Peterborough game there as well the weekend?
I did, yeah. I managed to get a stream. Don't ask me how I got that, but it was. I was really optimistic going into the game. I didn't think we'd necessarily win, but I weren't too worried about it. I've been saying to people, I think we'll finish 8th to 10th this season. I'd say higher, but I just don't think we've got the depth in the squad. And I think when we get injuries, unfortunately, we won't be able to progress like we could if we had an extra 3 or 4 players. So yeah, going into that game, I weren't that worried, actually. I thought we started awfully. I mean, the touch from Thompson, and lucky not. They should have scored, and we didn't look very pretty. I think a couple of passes, just wild passes that were sort of 10 yards off being completed early on, and I thought, oh, this doesn't look good. But Peterborough weren't punishing us, and I think as the game went on, I liked how relaxed we were. I liked how we tried to play our game, keep playing our game, which has been the story, I think, in all 4 league games. Peterborough had I think it was 10 or 15 minutes. They were bossing it, but somehow I think it was with the Lincoln game. I thought we could pull it at the end, and we did.
Yeah.
And I'm sure, I want to ask you two boys, did Mitch mean it?
Well, have you seen the tweet he's put out?
That's exactly what I was about to say. I saw that as well.
What was your intuition when he struck it? Did you think he tried it, or was it, did you think it was a cross? I mean, it doesn't matter at the end of the day, but
No.
I think if you've watched him in the last couple of seasons, he's got a little bit more about him than some of the other players, hasn't he? So, well, with all due respect to them, sorry, that sounded really rude there. But I think if there was anyone that was going to do it, it was going to be him, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, of course, he meant it. He's always going to say he meant it. If you scored it, Justin, or you scored it, Jordan, we all would have put our hands up and said we meant that. Of course, we would have.
Yeah, 100%.
It ain't one of those, though, is it? When you're, I don't know, running on goal, 40 yards out, goal in front of you, and you just smash it. I felt like his body shape, he's 100. I think he's totally meant it. It's as crazy as it is to try it from there. I think he's meant it, and as you said, he's that kind of player that can do that. It's not like he's going to do it every week, but he's got it in his locker, hasn't he? So I think he meant it. Had he gone straight in the net, I think everyone would be going, it was a wonder goal, because the keeper's the crown effort on the line. People are a bit like, oh, it's a cross, but I think he's meant it. I think it's genius, actually.
Yeah. Do you obviously whereabouts in the world are you now then? And obviously, do you plan on getting to many games this season? I'm
in Bosnia and Herzegovina. I'm in the process of trying to move here. I spent many years living in the Baltics, in Latvia. My girlfriend and I are looking at making a bit of a change. We really enjoy the Balkans, and yeah, we're trying to move to Bosnia, which is something that I don't think you'll find anybody else who claims such a thing. It's
a bit of a different one, isn't it?
We like this part of the world, and let's see. Like unfortunately, it's quite complicated with visas and work permits and all kinds of things like that. So remains to be seen whether we can actually do it. But that's what we're trying to do at the moment. So in other circumstances, I would have gone home. I would have been back for the Posh game for sure. But it's impossible at the moment, really. So I've bought a flight for the Charlton away game, which is mid-November, because I've never been to Charlton, and I really want to go. So
it's one you've got to tick off the bucket list, surely. Yeah,
exactly. I mean, I'd love to go to a game at Charlton anyway, but I want to go to that game. So I bought a flight for that. And if things sort themselves out before then, or if they don't sort themselves out, I'll definitely be back before.
Yeah. What's the football like there over in Bosnia? Obviously, you working in the game over there then?
I want to work in the game. I've just applied actually for quite a big job over here, but whether I get an interview, whether I ever hear back, or whether I actually get an interview remains to be seen. But I'd love to work over here. The football's nice to watch in the sense it's very technical. But if you're a fan rather than a coach, it's a great place because the atmosphere, especially at the big clubs, is unbelievable. I've been to watch Zelnica and FK Sarajevo, and they've had 15,000 in, but it feels like 40,000, and they've got all the pyro going and massive bank of ultras behind the goal and stuff. It's
were these
proper,
the Europe
school, really nice.
Are these the European games you went to? Is it Europa League?
Yeah, I did go to a couple of conference qualifiers. Unfortunately, both clubs didn't progress, but it was fantastic. And yeah, it's very old school. There's you down and when you're outside the ground and people having a pint and eating in the local takeaways and stuff. It really reminds me of it's more like going to Cobblers in the 80s or early 90s sort of thing. So I like it, and the people are very real, and yeah, they love the football, even though they've had very little success. But as a spectacle, that's fantastic. And yeah, technical. There's some really, really talented players, but there's also there's a lack of facilities here, and the game's not where it could be, I think. And I think if you look at neighbours Croatia, just over the border, they've got the facilities, and I think they're showing where Balkans football can be for other nations, really.
Where's the kind of grassroots scene in Bosnia? Do they have like lots of kids football going on? And
well, I haven't seen enough to give you a really accurate answer to that. But what I've seen so far is there's a real lack of decent pitches, and be they grass or be they 3G or 4G, as some people like to call them. When I was in Latvia, which has also got a lack of grass pitches, but it's got quite a lot of 3G. And in the last sort of 10, 15 years, every other kid seems to be playing in an academy. Use that term loosely because in a football club, but with really nice facilities, But what I'm seeing here is it's not. I think it's probably had a period of time where it's gone backwards, and maybe now is the time for it to start moving forwards again. But yeah, unfortunately, I think lack of facilities. It's from what I've seen, it's a little bit behind some countries in Europe.
So looking at your career, then when you were in Latvia, obviously you've done quite a bit of work there. You started one of the co-founders of Riga United.
Yeah.
Where are they now? Are they still running?
They are still running. They're playing in League 3, which is the 4th tier. The highest we've ever. I say we because it'll always be. I'm not directly involved with the club now, but I was until about 3 years ago, till all the COVID stuff kicked off, and it just wasn't viable anymore, really. But the highest we've ever been was top of League 2, which is top of the 3rd tier, and we could have gone up. We could have gone up into the next tier, and I think if we'd had money, and again comes down to the usual subject. We'd have the resources and the money and everything else. I think we could have gone to the Premier League within 3 or 4 years. But what we were held back by at the time was there was a foreigners rule. You could only have, I think, 4 foreigners on the pitch at any time.
Was that playing, or was that within the whole match day squad?
Yeah, I mean, we had we at the point when the development was really going well, we had 2 teams. We had a first team and a reserve team. We probably had 35 men across the club, but probably 25 were foreigners from 35. So I know that what happened to us when we played in the cup, we had to, with the foreigner rule related to us. So we struggled when we got through to a 3rd round of the cup. We suddenly had to ditch half the squad to play against a higher leagues side. So at the time, that made it impossible for us because I think we had the ambition to do it. Plus, a lot of the lads would have had to have gone pretty much full time, and they're over there with full time jobs and stuff, so that wasn't really going to happen. But what's happened now is actually that in the last 4 years, I think it is, they've got rid of the foreigner rule, and that's why Latvian football's on the up. Because now you're getting all the Brazilians and Croatians and what have you coming over, Nigerians and going over to play in Latvia. There's a bit of money. The crowds are coming in now to watch it. So we could have been there actually, but no, it didn't happen. But the club was still it was a beautiful thing. We had 2 men's league teams, 2 women's league teams. The women got to be bronze medalists in the Premier League. We had 8 academy teams, I think it was. We had 4 or 5 girls playing for the national team. So the club achieved, really big things. We had the biggest community for an amateur club in the whole of the Baltic states. Our award nights was better than the Premier League clubs had and all that sort of stuff. So it was a fantastic. It still exists, but what we did was a really beautiful thing. So you can always go higher, but it's, did you enjoy it? Did you achieve something? And I think we definitely did.
Yeah, no. Obviously, the top teams then in Latvia and Bosnia as well. How do they compare, would you say, to the English game? I know it's bias, obviously, over here, but what sort of level would they be at?
This question, it's I've been asked it many, many times, and I think it's a brilliant question, and I can't properly answer it. I wouldn't be. I think about Bosnian football. I don't think I've seen enough. I've been to 5 matches here, I think, but I don't think that qualifies me to be knowledgeable enough to give you a proper answer. But about Latvian football, if you went back 3 or 4 seasons ago and you looked at the Premier League, I'm thinking to myself, there's certain games you go to and you're thinking Northampton could have these,
Yeah.
But then you had 3 or 4 players that were playing international football, that were playing for the national team and doing really well, and then getting signed and going and playing a Polish First Division or Swiss Premier League or something. So you're thinking, well, that's Northampton players don't do that. So equally, you're down. Even when we were playing in the 3rd tier, some lads you're kind of thinking they're good Sunday league players, and then some lads are ex-internationals. Some lads they're youth team internationals, and 3 years later they're playing international football. So how do you put that together? You know what I mean? You kind of.
I suppose if you look at in comparison to in Northampton at the current time, Justin, that I know that at one of the current grassroots teams at under 16s, I think is, or 18s, has a Latvian youth international that went to the World Cup or a Euro recently.
Right. Okay.
And I wouldn't say he stands out as much as you'd like to think he does. He does stand out, but not as you'd expect an international player to stand out. So it probably gives you a little bit of an idea of locally, Jordan.
Yes, I mean, when I was at my prime, and you're sort of 22 or something, and you think about the best players around you, and a lot of lads who never made it even into the game, and I know a couple of lads who perhaps did, and I'm thinking, had we played in the Latvian league at that time, or that age, if you kind of put us into the future in 10 years later, I'm sure I personally could have played 2nd tier in Latvia, not Premier League, but there's lads I know would have gone. I'm sure they've gone Premier League, but I think the subject changes because now you've got clubs like Riga FC, RFS, and the players they're bringing in are really, really decent players. They just played against Twente from the Netherlands.
Yeah.
And this is the kind of team that you wouldn't expect Northampton to do very well against, obviously. But football's a funny thing. It's like we have the FA Cup, and you see a good non-league club, and they can spank anybody actually from the lower leagues in the right circumstances. So I think that's the beauty of football. As a general level, it's way below, but there are players in there that are super good. So it's like saying, you look at a Mitch Pinnock, and on his day he's better than anyone at that level, I think. But he's not consistent enough. And the reason Mitch isn't playing in the Premier League, I think, is because he doesn't do that 30 games a season. He does it 7 games a season. And I think that's the difference probably of why players play at certain levels most of the time.
Obviously, then I've been looking at you on Google and stuff. You've travelled all over. Obviously, I follow you on Twitter. You're travelling all the time. Where's the best or most unique place you've been and watched football, would you say?
To watch football, because people ask me that question, but it's never to watch football. And I start to tell them Greenland. I mean, I played in a game in Greenland, so that was a bit special. But that would be a really lovely place to watch football, I think.
Yeah.
The Faroe Islands. I think a lot of people in the UK really have sort of an eye on maybe going to watch a game in the Faroes sometime.
Is that the one where it's near the seaside, the pitch, with the really beautiful backgrounds and the mountainy bits and stuff?
Everything. It's just the sort of sheer cliffs that drop down into the sea. So that's a really interesting place. Oh dear, I'm not going to think. I want to watch some football in Burma. I don't know, 15 years ago, and that was crazy because Burma was sort of this very, very weird place. Very much a police state, and everything about that was weird. And there was sort of these golden temples in the background, and the stadium was full of monks. But half the monks, you know, they're secret police as well. So it's
right.
That's hard to beat in terms of combination of things.
Obviously, one of the places you did go was Zimbabwe. We've both got your book. Your book, One Ball No Nets. Sam, I think, finished it. I haven't finished it just yet. Yeah. But how did that come about? Obviously, the job in Zimbabwe.
Well, Sam will know if he's read it.
Yeah. I haven't told Jordan anything because I expected him to read it as well, Justin.
God, no, I'm going to do that to him.
I am, though.
Yeah, it won't surprise me. Yeah.
I wanted to. I had this crazy idea. I wanted to get involved in international football, and I don't have the badges for that. I do have some badges, but not enough to ever dream of getting to that level. So I thought I'd take a shortcut and try and work for a federation that was either outside of FIFA or maybe a women's federation that didn't have a national team. Start one up, that kind of thing. So it's a long story, but I nearly went to the Pacific to be head coach of a national team. Didn't quite work. And then I got offered the opportunity to go to Zimbabwe to be head coach in Matabeleland. And I knew they were playing at the World Cup in London the following year. So it was a bit like, yes, right, when do I go? They were like, we're not going to pay you. You're going to have to buy your own flight. Yes, it's fine. I'm coming.
Yeah.
We got nowhere for you to live. No, it's fine. Just
get me out there. What were you expecting when you landed in Zimbabwe? Was it anything what you expected, or was it totally different?
I've done quite a bit of travelling in Africa, and I had lived in Sierra Leone for a short period of time. I worked for the Craig Bellamy Foundation in Sierra Leone, and Sierra Leone's a lot tougher to live in than Zimbabwe, I'd say. So in certain senses, I was really prepared, and where I lived, although Zimbabwe's got lots of shortcomings, like, for example, I didn't have a hot water, no bath or shower for 6 months. Hot water, once in a week we'd boil some outside on the garden and on a fire, and I'd have a strip wash, as my nan used to call it. Stuff like that's fairly basic, but most of it was fairly comfortable compared to some places in Africa, I think. I think what I did expect is they gave me quite a big chat about how popular it was going to be and how many people were going to come down watching us play and stuff. Yeah. So I went down the first couple of games, and there was literally no one there. It was like one old man and his dog kind of thing. And there were no facilities. It was rubbish. We didn't have equipment. So I got sold a bit of a kipper on that front. It was way below expectations and way below, in terms of what we needed to do with the team. It was a lot harder than I expected when I took it on. But living in Zimbabwe and it's tough. There's no ATM machines. There's not a single ATM. I don't know if that's changed. I doubt it has. Not a single ATM machine in the country. Things like that are problematic because if you suddenly don't have any money, what do? You know, and someone meets you from South Africa, you send some money to South Africa and you meet them at the border and get some cash off them and then try to change it on the black. You know, these are quite extreme things if you've never had those kinds of experiences before. But it was very safe and very lovely people, and so it wasn't. Yeah, in certain senses it was a bit mad. In certain senses it was lovely.
Is this? Am I right in saying you were there in the time of Mugabe's time there as well?
Yes, that was the moment at which I thought my number might be up. There was a military coup, took Mugabe out of power. After I forget now, was it 40 years or 50 years or something ridiculous in power? And you know, the chat was that the country was headed for civil war. I had just burnt. I had a double entry visa, so I just burnt my first visa. So if I left the country at that point, I wouldn't be able to get back in. So the consideration was, do I just leave? Because I knew I could safely at that point. But if I do, I won't get back in and I won't be able to coach the lads. And do we ever get to London? So I did my own little lockdown, personal lockdown, and hid away for a few days. And for the best part of several weeks, I was very low key because we didn't know which way it was going to go. Was it going to be very violent? Fortunately, it was most of it was peaceful, and it didn't get nasty. And in hindsight, I made the right decision to stay. But it was very scary. I'd say that first weekend was very scary because I did wonder, will the secret police come and bang on the door and take me away and put me in prison? And that's no exaggeration. That's how myself, and because of what we represented and where we were, that's what we thought was going to happen.
Yeah, you're sitting duck a bit more of a target compared to everybody else.
Yeah, and of course they know you're there. I was the only white man in the entire suburb where I lived, so everyone knew that I'd come in. I came in on a tourist visa. I didn't go in on a working visa or a volunteer visa or anything like that. I mean, I was a sitting duck. If they wanted to arrest me or charge me or have me away, there was nothing I could do. So at the time, it was quite scary. It's easy to sort of brush it off and laugh about it now, but it wasn't. Yeah, I had a couple of wake up at 3 o'clock in the mornings and hear the dogs barking and think hearts pounding and like, oh my God, is this it? Sort of thing.
So they obviously we got to London anyway eventually. How was that? Obviously, it's CONIFA World Cup, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Is it totally different?
You have seen my T-shirt, haven't you?
Yeah, I have seen that. Yeah. At the time.
You can't smell it, so I'll put it on. I shouldn't be wearing it, but I put it on especially for this. The
sweat and fear of Peterborough game, yeah.
I seen the updated profile picture as well on your Twitter.
Yeah. I've never done that before. I don't know. I did have about 4 glasses of wine watching that game.
Yeah.
And I just thought, right, because I had a bit of banter going with some Peterborough fans, and I just thought I'll stick that on there because the people are bound to know.
Well, it was a double win for the Shoe Army, wasn't it? With the women winning as well.
Yeah, great stuff. I hope we get a bit of passion back in that derby as well, because Peterborough seem a bit.
I mean, a few of the Facebook groups, which I'm sure you are as well, Justin, and the amount of banter that's getting thrown about how happy the Cobblers fans are is outrageous.
Yes. Yeah. What's wrong with them? I'm just asking about London.
Yes. So how easy was it getting? Sorry,
go on.
I was just going to say, how easy was it getting, obviously, visas for all the lads and getting everyone over there?
It was. I don't know how we did it. I think if you hear these stories, sometimes we live in a simulation or something. That's the kind of thing I think we must do, because it couldn't possibly have happened. with just the amount of money we needed, the complications, the fact that none of the lads had ever been out of the country before, and you can't get out of Zimbabwe to anywhere other than South Africa or Botswana or something. You can't get visas for the UK.
Is it because of the other Olympic things? You know, when they had like a load of Olympic athletes from Africa come over, and when they come to London 2012, yes, they did their event and then run off.
Well, we actually, in the lead up, I can't remember if there was an event in Australia or where it was, but it was not only that had gone on in the past, it was going on at that time. And we, you know, this was part of the problem. We had to kind of vouch for the lads, and they're going, well, none of these lads have ever left the country. Most of them are from impoverished backgrounds. Why the hell wouldn't they do a runner when they get to the UK? And there's a bit of a story with Bruce Grobbelaar with that. I don't think I said too much in my book. Maybe I didn't even mention it, but he actually said he would vouch for the lads, every single one of them, that they would go back. And he said, if they don't go back, you can hold me personally responsible, and I'll fine them. Now, you know, I mean, Bruce is a bit of a lad, and actually I said to the lads, look, I said, you know, I don't know, I trust you all, but I have to have this conversation with you. You know, whatever the temptation is, if you go missing in the UK, this will impact your families. You know, your families, none of them will ever be able to leave Zimbabwe. And it'll come back on them like a ton of bricks. This isn't like some of the immigration you see going on now, the French thing and stuff. This is really quite serious, because they'll know who you are. And I said, and Bruce will come and find you in England. Yes, you know, he loves you, but he will come and get you.
Would you put it past him? Because I wouldn't. Looks like that kind of guy that would do that.
Yeah. So, I mean, they believed it. He said, you know, they were like, no, we're not getting it. But you could see in their eyes, they're like, yeah, we know Bruce will come and get us. And so we wouldn't dream of it anyway. And none of them, they're good as gold. There was one afternoon where we gave them a couple of hours off, and we always kept a big eye on. And that's not just because we just, you know, in football terms, I didn't want any of them going off and suddenly having half a bottle of wine before training or something. But I lost a couple of them. I was like, oh no, is this it? Is this it? You know, they're kind of around just sat about 100 yards away, just smiling at some girls walking past in their tracksuits, you know. But we did it, and to get those visas, and I think if you read when you read the book, we had a shocker, and we couldn't get the visas, and I mean, it's not giving the story away, because, you know, we went to London, but, you know, 4 or 5 days before we were due to go to London, we had no visas, or we had like 4 or whatever, and we were never going. And then what went on then, a couple of people who read the book have said, well, that's just, you know, it sounds like a good thriller, because, you know, because I'm on, you know, I'm trying to call the army minister, he was head of the armed forces. This is the bloke who's thrown Mugabe out of power in a military coup, and I'm trying to ring him on Skype, because I ain't got a SIM card. I'm trying to ring him to ask him, can he help us? And I've got Bruce Grobbelaar at an airport in Canada, because he's just about to fly to the UK for the tournament. And I'm saying, Bruce, it's screwed. And he's like, I'm on to the Prime Minister. You know, I'm on to the President. I'm phoning them. I'm going to try and sort this out. Mad, crazy stuff. Me bluffing to the Home Office stuff. And yeah, it's a long story, but we just fronted it, and we got through it, and we got all the visas, and we got the money. We borrowed money off people at the last minute to get us over the line. We paid them all back, including my mum. But we did it. And, you know, the question is always, you know, we got to London, but when I saw the lads arrive, because I was a couple of days ahead of them, when they arrived and I saw them walk in the hotel in their tracksuits, that was it. That job was done. I know we had to play in the tournament. I know we wanted to do well and everything, but that was the achievement. They started the FA, they qualified for the tournament, and we got them there. And I knew those lads had done that and were achieving what they wanted to do, that dream in their lives. And of course, then stepping out on the pitch and playing and everything else that went on was incredible.
Good. Now, fair play. How did you get on in the tournament? Can you? Obviously, I don't want to give no spoilers away for your book, but
yeah. What happened was we were unable to play any other tournaments, any other teams in the lead up to the tournament. So we didn't know in reality how good we were. But what we did know is we were playing the European champions, Padania, in the opening game. Now, they had Stankovic, who used to play for, who did he play for? The Italian club, Sampdoria. I think 100 caps for Lithuania. They had Serie C, Serie D boys. So they had a really good team. And, I had these bunch of lads who had never played on artificial grass, had brand new boots from Liverpool, from Grobbelaar, who'd just flown long haul, been on an airplane for the first time in their lives. We're in a big European capital, kind of with eyes that big,
Yeah.
And we went into that first game and we got absolutely hammered in the first half. After a good 15 minutes, then we just got absolutely hammered. And then it could have been awful. And we got them together and we just said, look, this is how good you are. You can pass through them. A lot of them are old men. Show us who you are. Show us your real African. Show us your Zimbabwean. Show us your Matabeleland football. And they went out second half and we scored a goal. Scored our first ever goal. It was an absolute beauty. You can find it on YouTube, but it's really a beautiful goal. And we had 2 1-on-1s with their keeper, and we lost 6-1, but it could have been 6-3. So you imagine playing against European champions. That's the result. We played at Sutton United, fairly big crowd in. And then from their second game, we were bossing it against the team that ended up in the semi-finals. But our keeper got sent off after 20 minutes at 1-0. So we obviously lost that in the end, unfortunately. But after that, we drew, lost on penalties, and then we won 2, we drew 1. So I think we had 1 friendly game as well. So I think overall we won 3, drew 1, and lost 2. Okay. But in terms of the tournament, we went out in the first round. But that's because you play for positions in the tournament. You carry on playing. Every team plays 6. But I think very respectable. And by the end of the tournament, we didn't concede in the last 3 games. It was clean sheet. 3 wins, one draw. So, I think if you turn around and said we're going to play the tournament again after 2 weeks, I think we'd have, we'd been a contender. Yeah. So I think we did really well.
I mean, going forward for them lads as well, that's some experience for them, isn't it? Going obviously to, like you say, European capital. The football-wise experience they're going to gain from that, massive.
Yes.
So my experience, Justin, is not quite the same as yours, but it's such like a massive thing for us personally. So I did some scouting for a long time for Samoa. So I was like a lead scout for Samoa. And when you see one of your players score a goal, or somebody that you've looked at or you helped coach or something along those lines, and they do something for their nation, even though it's not your nation, for that time that you work for that nation, it is your nation, and you see them score a goal or get their first cap, it's the best feeling in the world, isn't it?
Oh, is it that? Well, mate, respect. First of all, respect. That's fantastic. Did you go out? Was it from distance?
No, it was during the COVID stuff. So we did a lot of the UK and Australia were my areas, so we get lots of Y Scout videos or go live scouting. So one of my bigger, not claim to fame, is that there was a Samoan lady playing for the University of Nottingham. I went and watched her play, and then she made her debut 6 to 8 weeks after.
No, it's really special. I could give you a different example of that. When I was with Riga United, one of my players, she was the Latvian Footballer of the Year.
Lovely.
And I remember Leanna brought her to the club, and he ever had a chat with me and said, I'm thinking of joining your club, and I like what you're trying to do with the club, and convinced me to join. And we had a long chat, and I said to her, I think I can make you a better player, but I think you can enjoy your football. And the following year, she's Latvian Footballer of the Year. And how proud I felt, I can't, I didn't make, I had an influence, I had a positive influence, so I gave her a positive platform. But when she was at that award, and I saw all the everywhere spattered with, best player in Latvia, Riga United ladies, the ever bidder manner. One of the, it's one of the greatest things ever, the pride. So I totally understand you. And with those boys, it was in London, it was just the pride for every single one of them. If you saw where they come from, the poor background, and you saw turning up with, football boots with holes in them, and or turning up with no boots, and eating, they're eating 3 slices of white bread and crushing it together like this just to make it, like something in. That was their dinner. And then you see them in London, you see people asking to sign autographs with them, and BBC World Service and Sky and stuff trying to interview them. It's, you feel like crying, to be honest. You're crying with pride and happiness to see them there, really.
I was going to move on to your latest project. So, Marshall Islands, how did that come about, working for Marshall Islands?
I know, so the technical director of the Marshall Islands is a gentleman called Lloyd Owers, and from England. I think he lives in Oxfordshire. I should know this, but I think he does.
I think I've just seen him on one of the socials recently. I think he does live in Oxfordshire. You're right.
Yeah. And Lloyd and I were, I don't remember how it originally happened, but we were Twitter friends. This is the world we live in now, isn't it? I'm not that young, but I had some of my friends I've never met. They come from social media. Such a thing was unimaginable a few years ago. But Lloyd and I were friends through football and Twitter, and he'd shown an interest, particularly in Matabeleland, and he'd asked me a couple of times for advice. He wanted to do similar stuff. So we kept in contact, and we used to sometimes bounce ideas off each other or whatever. But early December last year, he just suddenly messaged me and said, hey mate, how you doing? I was all right. Yeah, where are you? I'm in Latvia. I'm with the Christmas market. What about you? He says, I've just become technical director of the Marshall Islands. I was like, what the what? Yeah. Mate, how's that happened? He says, oh yeah, well, you wouldn't believe it. And he told me the story, and he said, I just want to rack your brains, really. What do you think what do you think I can do with this? Any advice? And tell this story. But I was at the Christmas market, and I just went and got an Irish whiskey and sat down and just thought, oh, this is amazing. And I just sort of had a bit of a flash, because this is the last country on earth has never had a national team, never had a representative team, no league football, nothing going on. And I just thought, last country on earth without a football team, that's what a privilege to be involved with something like that. So I just...
Do they not have any league structure whatsoever then?
No league structure at all. No clubs, nothing. So I went back to him and I said, look, mate, I said, here's some of my ideas. And this is what I think you should do. And I think branding wise, and I don't mean that in a financial sense. I mean branding wise in the sense of people understanding what it is that you are, your identity. I said, it's incredible. So I said, look, my idea is that you do this, this, and this, but please, can I be involved? So he went, yeah, all right.
Well, what's the citizenship on players there? So obviously with Samoa, they have to be in Samoa for a specific amount of time in order to get citizenship for the country.
I'm still waiting. I've got to wait 6 months to get my passport. And obviously with no players, I will insist I'm on the first ever national team. But no, it's we've I mean, okay, if we look at it now, Lloyd's just been out and we've just set up a futsal league and we've just done the first sessions, and there are people that kick a ball around and stuff. And I think futsal is going to be the way to go at the start, because there's not the pitches, but you can just go and play on a bit of tarmac or on the sand or whatever, kind of cross between beach football and futsal. But we've just started the league. We had the first games on Saturday. We had 4 teams, but I think we're going to have 7 next week. So we've got players there, of course, and there will be, like always, there'll be a couple of lads that will fast track and just become really good quite quickly. But we have got a lot of Marshallese that live in the United States.
See, I found that with Samoa as well, that there was big pockets of Samoa due to obviously other sports that are bigger in those countries, like
Yes.
American football is massive in Samoa. So
Yes.
you get a lot of people that maybe in the 70s and 80s moved to Samoa to try and take up the NFL or
Yes.
some type of like pro wrestling or some kind of like heavy duty sport.
Mhm.
And then their 2nd, 3rd, 4th generation kids would be into soccer. And then that's where there'd be a lot more people to look at that are of a higher caliber. I'm presuming that would be the same with yourselves.
Yeah, so for sure in the States, without giving too much away, we already know that we've got some quite half-decent players that we can potentially call upon. What we don't want to do is just have a full diaspora team, but because we're fully committed to developing football on the islands, and that's going. We're in the schools now. We've got the futsal. We're going to start club teams. We're going to aim for playing in an international tournament in futsal next year. We're hoping to play first 11 aside next year. We'll aim to have a first ever national team game. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if we lose 50-0 or 30-0 or 10-0 or 8-1. We will create that and we'll take it on. But what we do know is that we also have this fallback. We will have players to call upon around the world, most of them in the States. So I think, and I think in the Pacific, the catch-up is not that great. It's not, the bar is not that high that you can't catch up. It's not like, I don't know, in Europe, you might need 30 years to catch up. The teams now that your Gibraltars of this world that can go and, and walk out and play against big clubs and not big national teams and not get absolutely murdered. That kind of process can take, I remember Albania of 30 years ago, we're getting hammered and that can take 30 years. But I think in the Pacific, you can maybe catch up. If you do things in the right way, you can catch up in 5 years.
There's some really good technical directors in those areas as well, isn't there? Like the one at Samoa is called Jess Ibrom. And I think he did a lot of time in England. I think he did a bit of time in America. And now I think he's gone from Samoa to, I want to say the Cayman Islands, but that might be incorrect. But another smaller nation where the development, as you rightly said, is 3 to 5 years, you could be back in there rather than the 10 to 30 years situation where the teams get better.
It comes down to how you go about things and who you know and look and all kinds of things. So I think what we're trying to do is not just do that. We're trying to build everything around it. We're doing a lot of networking. We're trying to create. We've got big awareness of us, despite the fact we don't really have anything much into football terms. We've already got 4,000 followers on Twitter. We've gone from 0 this year. Which is more than a lot of national federations. I know that might sound a bit sort of, why is he telling you got 4,000 followers on Twitter? Well, it's having the awareness and having people hearing your message. It's vital. It attracts people to you. It attracts sponsors. It gives you political weight to go to.
Gives you a bit of clout, doesn't it?
Yeah, you can go to the OFC and AFC and start to say, look, this is what we're doing. This is our plan. This is our 1 year plan, 3 year plan, 5 year plan. This is what we've achieved so far. And they start to take you seriously because you've done that with no money and you're doing more than some federations that are financed by the likes of the AFC and not really doing much. So we've got a good team. It's not just Lloyd. I've got Matt Webb who's working with me, and then we've got lots of other people that starting to join us. We've got people out there in the marshals now that are doing stuff. We've got other people that are helping us that are not on the radar yet. We're starting to announce. So we believe we can do this, and I mean we already are. I mean, it's a question of each step up. I don't know if you're playing in League 10 and you get to League 9, that's development. So that's how we look at it. If we're at League 7 in a year's time, or League 6, we've made huge strides. So I think we'll do it. I think we'll do it. The rest of it comes down to luck. It's like a football club. That's what I said about Northampton. They can do really well this year, but if Leonard suddenly gets injured and you don't have the lad sitting in doing that, or Sam gets injured, or Pins, or Guthrie or something, it changes. It changes everything. And for us, it's not about the footballers at this point. It's about, does somebody come in and sponsor us? Does somebody famous like what we're doing and help us? Do we get CNN and Sky News following us? These are the things that will take us forward or not take us forward more quickly.
Because once you get one big person involved, it kind of escalates madly, doesn't it? So I'm going back to Samoa in that sense, that once we spoke to Tim Cahill and got him involved, because obviously he is Samoan of descent, one of his sons became the Samoan under 17 or 18's captain. And as soon as he got involved, it just flourished, because obviously people knew who Tim Cahill was on a more wider scale, because he played for Everton in the Premier League. And then that kind of had that knock-on effect, doesn't it?
Well, I mean, going back to Matabeleland, I got Bruce in. And why did I get Bruce in? There was lots of reasons for it. He was a great person to have around, because everyone respected him and looked up to him. And he had a lot of knowledge for us. And politically, he helped us in terms of getting the visas at the last minute and all those kinds of things. But he gave us awareness and engagement, because of, when I announced that Bruce Grobbelaar's, working for me, he's one of my staff, which is ridiculous, of course. But when I said to people, he's my goalkeeper coach, people suddenly listen. And they take you seriously, and they go, well, if they brought in Bruce Grobbelaar, doesn't matter what some people don't like him, some people love him, but you take it seriously. And having Tim Cahill, and you take it seriously, and it's like Cobblers bringing Simpson, and people say, well, they've signed him, they must be serious. You know how it works. It's about a lot of it's about. Having those kinds of names and people respect, and then they take them more seriously.
Just a quick one on that. Obviously, Bruce coming in. Did all the lads there, the players, and that know who he was? I assume.
It's a good question, because some of the lads were very, very young. So I don't know. I don't truthfully know if any of them ever went home and asked their mums or grandmothers or grandfathers or their mates, who, by the way, who is he?
Yeah.
I'm not sure if that ever happened, but most of them did know who he was for sure. You've got to be joking me. Because he'd left Zimbabwe. He left. It's a long story, but he'd left Zimbabwe. He wasn't. Bruce told me something along the lines of Mugabe invited to come back and be a national team coach. This is going back quite a few years ago. And Bruce had said to him, all right, you need to pay me in US dollars. And he went, no, I'm not going to pay you in US dollars. I'm going to pay you in Zimbabwe funny money.
And he didn't fancy it.
He said, no, I'm not doing it then. You pay me in dollars. And then he basically, I think he had his passport blacklisted or something like that. He basically wasn't allowed to come. I don't know if this is the official story that Bruce, but that's how I understand it. So he whatever had happened with because he fought in the war in Zimbabwe as well back in the day, and he couldn't go back. So a lot of people were like, "Why have you got Bruce?" Because he can't even come back to the country. Like, no, he's going to be. We were hoping he was going to meet us in South Africa because we were going to play some games there. That's a lot. Again, I won't go into that now; it's too short a time. But I said no, he'll be in London. He'll be there, and he'll be working with us. And when we got there, and Bruce was there with the boots. So as soon as the lads come in, he was kind of kneeling down on the floor, kind of helping them put boots on, and that was a big deal as well because psychologically to see a man like
showing them that they're the star rather than him.
Exactly. He's there going, let's try these. He's still got the strut on him. He's still, he's still giving it, he's still the main man, but he had a humbleness as well, which was lovely, which is exactly what happened after when we lost the first game. He got us round in a circle. I mean, he's not the main coach, but he said, look, listen, come in. And he knelt down below everyone and he gave them a bit of a chat about how proud you should be and what you've achieved and where we're going to go from the rest of the tournament. So, but going back to your original question, I'd love to know how many of them actually, because you couldn't say that, could you? It's I was on about, I can't remember who I was on about, Laetitia or somebody, and they didn't know who he was. And I was thinking,
must have been young, yeah.
That can't be true. But I thought, at least you're honest. At least you're honest. Yeah. It'd be like, when I was young, Norman Hunter or something. I've heard the name, but I'm not sure. Yeah, who was he?
Bit of a club legend, that one.
He must have been a young lad you were talking to, was
it? Sorry?
It must have been a young lad you were talking to.
He was a young lad, but I can't think who he was. But
I'm going to dig Jordan out here, Justin. Do you reckon Jordan knows who Norman Hunter is?
How can you know Laetitia is? But
just ignore Sam there.
If you don't know who Norman Hunter is, then Jordan, no.
I'm only young, and I'm only young.
Excuse me.
Norman Hunter, Jordan, played for Leeds United, mate.
Yeah, Leeds. Yeah, I knew that. Yeah. Where was I? Sorry, the Marshall Islands. There, obviously, massive look with that. Is that? Are you anything on the side? That obviously, you say you applied for a job there in Bosnia. Is that your next step in football, or is there any more plans to go anywhere else?
You know what? I mean, after Matabeleland, I did hope the phone would ring, and it didn't, because a lot of people, I think, said, you've worked wonders, you've done some really good stuff there, and there was interest, but no one ever really approached me. And I had a fairly good CV at that point. I'd done 2 League 2 clubs in Latvia and Women's Premier League in Latvia as well. So it didn't happen, and I didn't pursue it. I wrote my book at the time, and it came a point where I was a bit like, well, I'm not missing the coaching that much actually, because I give 100%, and I find it's just absolutely exhausting. And I was a bit like, do you know what? I was thinking, this is my last years to play football. So I kind of at the time just thought, do you know what? Nobody comes in. I'm not going to pursue it too much. I'm just going to try and play some league football. And I played, in my 40s and playing some league football in Latvia last couple of years. So I really enjoyed that. And then I was working with CONIFA. So I was involved in football still, but stuff, it didn't quite happen. Now this came up, obviously last year. I almost went to coach in Romania last year. I got offered a job. You'll think I'm mad, but I got offered a job in the Caribbean. I should be in the Caribbean now. I got offered a coach, and I turned it down. I turned it down to come to no job in the Balkans because my missus and I really wanted to move here, and we just kind of. We thought about it for 3 or 4 days and said, no, this is where we want to be. And
was it the Caribbean Premier League? Yeah.
No, it was an academy in the Caribbean. But it was a nice job. It was working under a former national team boss and stuff. But it was, I just felt it's not where I wanted to be in the world. I've done a lot of traveling the last few years, and I just thought I want to be in Europe and want to make a new life in the Balkans if it works out. And I am speaking to clubs. I am speaking to a couple of academies. But until I get My work permit and residence sorted here. I can't start working for anybody anyway, unfortunately. But definitely want to do some coaching again. I'm ready for coaching. I think I'm ready for more for the academy stuff for the kids. I think that's where you see the biggest development. If you coach children well, you see them really develop fast. I don't feel the glory need because of all the Matabeleland stuff. I think I know it's not professional, but I think got pleasure out of that, of having been at a World Cup and stuff. So I think I want to coach, but I want to work in football development, and the Marshals is a great thing to be involved in, and I think I'd like to be involved in more of that in the future.
Yeah.
Helping. And you don't have to be out with a football. You can do it with a computer, and you can do it. Even conversations like this, people will listen to conversations like we're having, and it will give some people a jolt. It will give them motivation. It will give them something that they want to do, something more in their lives. You're saying the Samoa story is absolutely fantastic. Somebody will listen to that and go, you know what? Yeah, maybe I can do something like that, So,
yeah.
Football's, it's not just about being out on the pitch and coaching a top side. It's everything with the game, really.
Right, good. Obviously, good luck in the future. Obviously, that's a massive thing there. Doing everything, it's obviously starting from scratch, building it up. So that'll be some achievement when you get there, and I'm sure you will.
I know we'll have a national team, and I know we'll play. I know we'll have a league, and we'll leave something there. We already have. I don't know if you've seen the Marshall Islands Twitter, but we've already got all the young boys and girls playing. We got adult teams started, as I've said, and smiles on faces, and that's already a success. You can't. That's the thing. You've already succeeded. So. Everything else is a plus from here on in. And I think that's what I'd say to people. I think sometimes people get put off trying things because they think, well, I'm never going to get to be Manchester United boss or play for Northampton or something. But everything is, there's achievements at all kinds of, and that's why I referenced what you told me about the Samoa. I think that's fantastic. So, yeah, have these mini goals and go for it.
I appreciate it. Thank you for coming on. Thanks for your time.
My pleasure.
When you're back in Northampton, when you do get to a game, send us a message and we'll buy you a pint.
What one each?
Yeah,
100%. Well,
I'll tell you what. I'll even throw out the fact that if Cobblers are away, you can come and watch my Saturday League team if you want. I'm the manager at Hayford Athletic Reserves. It'll come down to earth here, so you're more than welcome to come and have a little look at one of our games.
And they're not going to like you for that either, Sam, because they're playing on Saturday.
I'm definitely ain't going to do it when I come back for 3 nights in November. I won't do it then, mate. I'll be lying because I'll go and see my mum as well and stuff.
Of course.
If I'm back for a week, I will. Let's do that. I'd love to do that. If I'm next, I'll be back at some point for a week.
You're more than welcome to join me on the bench for that day if you want. Do a bit of coaching yourself.
Can I?
Of course.
You know what? I used to do that, and by the way, although you can't always do it with the old protocols and stuff, I used to have guest assistant managers when I was Rig United ladies coach. So I had a lad who was he was an Pro or A licensed coach from Spain. I was friends with, and he came over, and I had him. I think because of his badges, I was allowed to put him on the protocol anyway. But I had him in, and I had him helping sort of, for 2 games. My mate Tony McMullen, who's now in Cambodia, I had him in as assistant coach. So I used to do that. I used to have a bit of fun because it was quite interesting to have another character around the team. He obviously didn't give them authority as such, but he said, this guy has coached at, blah, blah, blah level, and he's going to help us. And people appreciate it. There weren't a threat from it because they knew that they'd be leaving after a week or 2.
Yeah.
So they weren't like, oh God, who's he? Who's this? Is he gonna, is he? They kind of feel comfortable with them. So I recommend bringing in the odd assistant coach from time to time, as long as they behave themselves.
And Jordan's never going to be on my coaching staff then.
Yeah. But as Sam don't set too much of an example anyway, I don't think he behaved himself on the sideline.
I can't possibly comment. I don't know you guys.
I don't, Justin. I just don't.
Speed, yeah.
He thinks he's Northampton's own Jose Mourinho.
Well,
takes the pressure off his players.
So say again.
He takes the pressure off his players, takes the limelight off them, puts it on himself.
Yeah, well, yeah, well, I used to do that with the ladies in coaching sessions. When we got to the end of the Wednesday night session, we used to have always end with the game. I mean, you always end with the game, right? I'd join in and I go, next goal wins, and I'd nearly always score it.
And then you'd wheel off in the celebration, like Alan Shearer.
Massive, over-exaggerated celebration, kind of wind up a couple of the players that you can still do a bit better. So I know, yeah, these things can be quite good actually.
Good man. I appreciate your time, Justin, and I look forward to seeing you in the future.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me on. I appreciate it,
mate. I appreciate it.
Cheers, Justin. Thanks, mate.
Yeah, next time we speak, Cobblers will be in the top 6, I hope.
Hopefully, yeah.
We'll keep you on that one. We'll keep you posted during the season.
Yeah.
Good man.
Cheers,
Good man.
guys.
Cheers.
Thank you. Thanks.